Let's head to the phones. Joining us right now, GOP political strategist, also co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Chad. Doing great. How about you?
Doing well. Thanks for coming on today. Appreciate it. As always, let's start off talking about the big news that broke on Friday. House Speaker John Boehner announcing that he's done. He will be resigning and retiring, leaving Congress. Let me ask you a couple of deals on this. What does this mean as far as conservatives go? Is this a big conservative victory? Where do you think leadership goes to next?
I think for the most part it's a victory for conservatives. Boehner was much more concerned with holding the majority and not giving in to, the block of 30 or 40 really hardline conservatives in the House, and sort of bowing to political reality, whereas the base and the conservative bloc in the House really wanted to see Republicans fight, and whether that was on Planned Parenthood or on the Iran deal or on spending or on Obamacare or on executive amnesty, the House Republicans just haven't really moved the ball forward at all in the first 9 months of this year, having full control of the Congress. I'm not sure from a tactical standpoint they're going to change that much. I think McCarthy will be a little bit better. I think he's a better communicator. He doesn't hate Tea Party types and grassroots conservatives the way Boehner did. He's a more shrewd guy. He's more strategic. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to want to shut the government down. And
right.
So if that is your test for whether the Congress is doing what you want them to do, I think McCarthy's going to just disappoint you. But the real question is also going to be: are we going to get a conservative in one of the other leadership slots, majority leader, House Whip, conference chair? Because having a seat at that table to advocate makes a big difference. And so I haven't seen a really, really strong conservative, like Jim Jordan of Ohio or someone like that, step forward to run yet, who has a chance to win. But I think the leadership elections are likely to be in weeks, not days.
Let me ask you this. What is, in your opinion, what's more important? The job that Boehner was trying to do, keep the majority, trying to keep Republicans happy and continuing to win, or fighting for what the grassroots are advocating for? Or does there need to be a mix?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like a middle path for the last 2 years of Obama would be the best. It's not just that they weren't, shutting down the government and doing what the base wants. It's that they weren't even really passing bills that Obama would have to veto. We didn't pass an alternative to Obamacare. We didn't pass a tax reform plan. We haven't passed a border security bill. Those are things that yes, Obama could veto them, certainly. But at least we'd have a very clear idea of what Republicans stand for and what Democrats, aren't willing to accept. I do think that the most important thing Congress can achieve the last 2 years of Obama is to basically shut him down. And that's why you're seeing these executive orders, because he's not getting what he wants in Congress. I think the bigged fights are going to be in the next Congress if we have a Republican White House. That's where you can really make a difference. And so I think we need to maintain our ability to hold that majority, and I think that's particularly important in the Senate where the margin is so narrow. But I would have liked to see the House and Senate both pass positive legislation that says exactly what Republicans believe.
Do you think Mitch McConnell is in any danger there in the Senate? There's some reports that conservatives are aiming at Mitch McConnell next.
I'm sure they are going to aim at him, but I don't think he's in any danger. McConnell is, I think, he has a very small number in the Senate of senators like Ted Cruz, perhaps Mike Lee. It's really a handful, 2, 3, 4 people who are really disappointed with the decisions that he makes. But there's not a mechanism in the Senate to get rid of the majority leader. There just isn't. There'll be a vote at the end of this Congress for the next Congress. But once the new senators are elected, so that will be probably just before Thanksgiving or just after Thanksgiving. And I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion at that time of perhaps leadership changes. I don't think it's likely to happen. McConnell's worked his entire career for this position, very careful to make sure that he is doing what's in the best interest of the conference, and that he has the support of the majority of the conference. So, honestly, if Cruz had a larger contingent, that would be more significant. But the contingent he has in the Senate is actually fairly small, and you've even seen people like Rand Paul and Mike Lee and Rubio not go with him on the shutdown strategy that he's pushing right now. So I just don't think that the frustration with McConnell within the Senate is as large as the frustration within the House of Boehner was.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, last week we saw Scott Walker drop out, one of those top-tier guys who just could not connect with the voters, and also having to deal with the summer of Donald Trump and just not getting any TV time as well probably hurt Scott Walker's campaign. Now there are reports coming out that people are putting pressure on Jeb Bush, that it's time for him to start turning things around. Do you really think Jeb Bush is in that much trouble?
I don't think Jeb's in trouble in terms of, having to drop out. He still has a super PAC with $100 million in it. He's still going to be able to raise, good money. But I do think there's a real sense that he's not performing like a first-tier candidate, and that, he has nervous donors and nervous, supporters in the early states who look at him mired in 5th or 6th or 7th place in polling, nowhere in Iowa, 3rd, 4th, 5th place in New Hampshire, and they say, is this guy really going to do this or not? So I do think there's a real risk that you're going to see some of his support move to Rubio, or perhaps someone else. But really, I think Rubio is best positioned for this, and this has really been the risk or the bet that Rubio's made all along, is that he wants to just make slow progress all the time and be well positioned when other people fade away. He's gotten, a third or half of probably the infrastructure that Walker had in the early states and within his fundraising operation. So Rubio is very well positioned, and honestly, Jeb has been underperforming this entire campaign. He's put some good policy proposals out there, but he continues to make these unforced errors on the campaign trail that raise questions about whether he's really a strong enough candidate to go out and beat Hillary or whoever the Democrats nominate. So I don't think Jeb's going to be out. I do think there's going to be 3 or 4 more candidates that drop out this fall. I think you have to pay attention to someone like Rand Paul, who's in real danger right now. You can look at perhaps some of these people like Pataki and Santorum and Lindsey Graham. But I think the field's going to continue to narrow and the vote's going to continue to consolidate. But until we get down to 2 or 3 viable candidates, Trump is still going to be in a strong position. That anti-Trump vote has to consolidate, more than it is right now.
Yeah, well, and I also find it interesting, the latest NBC News poll put Ben Carson and Donald Trump nearly tied at 21% and 20% each. So that's something to watch, I guess, going forward, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, Carson is not going to be the nominee. He has a lot of support out there. People like him. I just don't think people are going to ultimately say this guy should be president of the United States. So you look at that, and I kind of feel the same way about Trump. I mean, you have almost half the vote being taken up by 2 people who are unlikely to be the nominee. That means you have a very fluid race. It's very unsettled. It's very unpredictable. And I come back to the idea that I think Cruz is well positioned when Trump fades, and Rubio is well positioned when Jeb fades. And so it could be a Cruz-Rubio sort of head-to-head finale in March of next year, but it depends a lot on how Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, how they go early in those early states.
That would be definitely very interesting and very entertaining to watch. Matt, tell folks what they can find on mustreadtexas.com this week.
Yeah, I posted my column in the Statesman from this morning, which is about how well-positioned Cruz is for the nomination. You can find that there. There's also an interesting story from Breitbart, Texas, about everything that's going on with George P. Bush and the Land Commission office. Some of the attacks that have been thrown his way is a pretty good summation of everything that's happening with him. You can find all that, all the news and opinion, at mustreadtexas.com.
All right. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Mackowiak. Matt, as always, appreciate your time, and have a great week out there.
Take care, Chad. Thanks.
Have a good one. That's Matt Mackowiak. You can follow him on Twitter. Encourage you to do so. A lot of great information out there that he puts online.